Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. It's Christina from Our Wood Home. As you can tell from the title of this video, this is part 3 in my winter wardrobe sewing series. I think it might be the last one, but I'm not sure yet. I do have one more skirt to make, but it will be made in the exact same way as this one, so I might not show that. I've made a denim skirt, and that's what I'm showing you in this video. It's something I've wanted to make for a while. I do have a shorter skirt, but this one is going to be a lot better for the winter because it's a lot colder, and I prefer to keep my legs covered as much as possible with as much fabric as possible when it gets really cold out. So I didn't show the entire sewing process, but I will explain what I'm doing as it pops up on the screen. I hope that you enjoy this third part in my winter wardrobe series. Alright, so here are the pieces I've cut out for my denim skirt. I'm just using a dark wash, sort of lightweight denim that's got some stretch. The pattern that I'm using is one that I've used before. I bought it a few years ago, and it was the first pattern I'd ever tried using. Over the years, I've had to make a few modifications to it, and I haven't made a skirt, I think, for about a year using this pattern, so I've figured out even more things I want to change about it. Just some details and some features on it that I'm not crazy about. So I'm experimenting with this pattern a little bit, this updated pattern. It's supposed to have a zipper in the front, which I don't like, so I would always just make it smooth on the front with a zipper on the side, and that worked fine. But when I bought these fabrics, I forgot to buy zippers, and now we're in lockdown here in Ontario, Canada. So the fabric store is not available for me to just go in and browse. And I know I could just go like to Walmart or even just buy a zipper online, but I prefer to see it in person just for color matching. So all that to say, I've decided to do buttons on the side. You'll have to excuse Vinny. She thinks anything on the floor is meant for her inspection, which it's not. Anyways, so right here, I've decided to do buttons on the side for the closure. So I've left a little bit of extra space or a little extra fabric just to make sure that it closes smoothly and that it doesn't gape. We'll see how this works. It might end up being a disaster, but I'll let you know what happens. I'm not sure how much I'll actually film of the sewing process, but I will let you guys see various progress points of this skirt. And now here's some footage of Vinny just doing her thing. Vinny. She just ate breakfast, so that's why she's cleaning her little face. This skirt is really easy to make. It only has 4 pieces for the body of the skirt, and then there are a few pieces for the waistband. But what I'm going to be doing is just sewing the front pieces together at the center seam, and then sewing the back pieces together at the center seam. And I did label all my pieces because I just find that easier. I also labeled which seams I wanted as the center seams and the side seams. Again, it's just a little bit easier when all the pieces kind of look alike. If you noticed in the previous clip where I showed you the button area, I'm going to end up cutting off some of those pieces because I don't need the button closures on the left and the right side of the skirt. I prefer my buttons or my zippers to be on my right side, but when I was just cutting out the pattern pieces, I just traced the front and back so that they were identical, and I wasn't sure yet which side I would want the buttons on, but as I said, I ended up choosing the right side, so I just cut that little tab off of the left side so it was just a straight line from the bottom up to the waist. I will point out I'm using just an all-purpose needle in my sewing machine. I'm not using a denim specific needle because I don't need to for this weight of denim. But when I sew the waistband on later and when I do the hemming, I do switch to a heavy denim net needle. Just make sure you check your sewing machine manual or look it up online to see what needles you should be using for what fabrics. I'm just doing a regular straight stitch up all the seams. I would ideally be using my serger to give the raw edges that nice finished look like you'd see on the inside of a store-bought garment. But my serger is in for repair, and it has been for far longer than I'd like, so I'm going to be going back over all my homemade garments of the last several months once I get my serger back, and just finishing those edges off nicely. But this is an optional step. Depending on your fabric, if you think it's going to fray, you might want to do just a regular zigzag stitch over the raw edges. Just go over them a few times to make sure it doesn't fray. Or you can finish the seams off like super fancy and roll them down and everything, but that's more work than I want to put in, and I'm not going to be the one to show you what to do for that because there's lots of better tutorials online. But for now, if you see all the raw edges on the inside of my skirt and think that that's atrocious or something, just know that I will be fixing that once I get my serger back. So in the first clip where you could see all the pattern pieces cut out, I showed you the waistbands, and I had just cut out 2 pieces of denim to go around my whole waist, but I decided to do another layer just of a contrast fabric because I thought it would be more fun. But I decided to do a double layer for the waistband just so that it stays up properly and doesn't flop over, because the denim's not quite that thick that it would stand up on its own. The original pattern called for using some interfacing, which is fine, it's great to use. I just didn't have any, and I didn't want to go buy any because, as I said, we're in lockdown and it's hard to find stuff in stores. But I've used interfacing before and it's fine, but also just using a double layer of fabric in this case works fine. Not in every situation, of course, but for my use, just using 2 layers worked perfectly fine. This isn't so much a tutorial as it is just watch me make stuff, because I don't think I'm qualified enough to be telling anybody this is the way you should do something, it will work out for you every single time. Because honestly, a lot of my sewing for myself is trial and error because I'm just experimenting with designs and making up patterns as I go. But now I know what to do with this skirt, so maybe I'll do a proper tutorial and show you what I'm actually doing in greater detail. But getting back to the waistband, so I just took a corduroy fabric because it's got some nice weight to it, and I put that together, the right sides of the fabric together, and then I'm just going to be sewing those to the denim in one big long strip to fit around my waist. And once, oh, I should add, I left the bottom edge unsewn so that I can flip the whole strip inside out so that the right sides are facing out. I know that sounds confusing, but hopefully you know what I mean and you can see what I mean from this clip. So once I finished sewing the 3 edges of this waistband, I decided to iron it because it was pretty lumpy and I wanted it nice and smooth for when I was sewing it. And then I also decided to just sew down along the top edge just to make it nice and flat, which you'll also see. Here is the waistband. It's been ironed so it's nice and smooth, and I'm just going to go along the top edge there, just using a regular straight stitch in the thread that I want, which is a dark color. And this is totally optional. You don't have to do this if you don't like the look of it, but I think it's going to just keep the waistband looking a bit neater and smoother, and it will be easier to sew it on to the skirt once I'm ready for that, because it'll just be nice and in place and I don't have to worry about those 2 layers of fabric kind of shifting when I'm pinning and sewing that in place. So to attach the waistband, what I did was lined up the spot where it's joined together on the side seam, the one that doesn't have the split for the buttons or zipper, whatever you're choosing to do. So I lined it up there. I put the outsides together, so the outside of the skirt and the outside of the waistband. I just pinned together along the top of the waist, or the top of the part where they'll meet. I think you know what I mean. So I just pinned that all the way around. And then because I have some hanging over where there's going to be buttons here on the side, I just pinned those together and I'll sew along there. And then sew along this raw edge. I think I'll just do a regular straight stitch. And if I had my serger, I would do the nice serged edge, but I don't have it back from the repair shop yet, so I'll just go over it with a zigzag just so it doesn't fray. I was thinking of attaching this waistband differently, but I like this nice clean edge when it's all finished. The alternative would be to open this back up because the bottom here isn't sewn shut. So open it back up and put the denim layer on the outside, put the corduroy, which is the inside layer, on the inside of the skirt, and pin those edges together, making sure to trap the layer of skirt in between. I don't know if I'm explaining that very well. That way is fine. I just find it a little bit more fiddly, and then you end up seeing the seam like you'd see here. You'd see that along the spot where they join, and I just prefer this more clean look. Let me show you on another skirt what I mean. So yeah, that's the nice clean edge, which is what I'm going for with this denim skirt. So I will sew the waistband to the skirt and check in with you once that's finished. I think I forgot to show or talk about those little tabs for the buttons. So I ended up just pinning them down to make a nice smooth edge, sewing that down. And that's going to be fine. It's not going to fray or anything like that. Now I'm just going to be sewing the waistband to the skirt using a heavy needle, a thick needle, to make sure that it can go all the way through those multiple layers of fabric. And again, I'm just doing a straight stitch here, making it as straight as possible. Yeah, it's pretty self-explanatory. So here's how it looks all finished. It's a really nice clean edge, which I like, and I don't think the seam across the top of the waistband is very noticeable. I'm just going to go through and cut off any loose threads. I might have to sew down some pieces by hand, but that's okay. I also realized I didn't line up the seams perfectly on the left side of the skirt, but again, that's not a problem because I will be having a shirt covering it anyways. Next up is the hem, and I've talked before about how I usually like to do the hem pretty early on if I'm doing a dress, just because it's a little bit easier to do it before all the pieces are sewn together and they've got the curve or just the drape of the fabric. But for this skirt, I don't know why I didn't do it first. Usually I do. I think I was waiting to see about the length. I don't know, but anyways, I just folded the raw edge up twice into a narrow hem, pinned it down. Optionally, you can iron it down if you want a nice smooth crease, but I didn't bother doing that. I just took the pins out as I went, and I was able to get a nice clean seam. Something you'll notice in the try-on footage later is that I should have ironed the skirt before I put it on, because the hem did kind of roll up a bit on its own, which again is not a big deal, but maybe if I had a wider hem that wouldn't have been a problem, but it doesn't really bother me because I'm not going anywhere lately anyways. Here is the finished skirt. I feel like I need to make a disclaimer. My waist is not that small as it is shown on the mannequin. Not that it's anybody's business, but I have had people comment about that in the past, and as I said, it's no one's business, but if you must know, this mannequin is considerably smaller than I am, so I had to pin it on just to keep it up. Anyways, here's the nice waistband. I really like how it turned out. I like the contrast fabric inside. I should iron it just to make sure that it's nice and smooth everywhere, but just for this clip, it was fine as it is. There's a nice hem. I'm pretty pleased with how the side turned out with the button detail. I do need to just hand sew some things and clip some more threads, but I think this is definitely a style I'm going to be doing again. I used some pretty big snaps, which you can kind of see there. I just used some nice black ones from Walmart, but I like the ease of the snaps over buttons and even a zipper, because I find a zipper sometimes just doesn't lay very flat, and I'm not the best at sewing zippers. But another thing I like about having the snaps is I can move them to make the skirt waist a bit narrower or a bit wider if I need to. And as I said before, it's the same pieces on the front and the back, so there's really no differentiation, which is kind of what I like. It's just nice and simple, and it's got a nice wide silhouette, a nice A-line, because I do take fairly wide strides, and I climb a lot of stairs during my day, and I want something that I'm going to feel comfortable in and not have to worry about tripping or just not having as much movement as I'd like. So let's get into the try-on footage where you can see it on me. And I apologize for my head being missing. I didn't feel like setting up my tripod, so I just put the camera on a coffee table in the living room, and I can see now that was a bad choice. Overall, I really like the skirt. I do wish it was a little bit longer. That's my own fault though. It's not a problem. It's fine. I just would have liked a bit longer, but I'm still really happy with it, and I kind of want to make more denim skirts like this for myself, maybe in different washes, but for now, this one is sufficient. I hope that you enjoyed seeing this little sewing video. Do feel free to let me know if you liked it in the comments, give this video a thumbs up, and maybe consider subscribing if you like what you see here on my channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.